This is Australia. Take a closer look at this chart. It tells a powerful story. Back in 1975, the average Australian earned about $5,306 a year, while the typical house cost just $19,000. That's less than 4 times the annual income. Fast forward to 2025, and the picture looks very different. The average income has risen to $94,300, but the median house price has exploded to around $822,630. That's now nearly 9 times the annual income. In this way, GDP per capita has increased nearly 18 times, while median house prices have risen nearly 43 times, far outpacing income and GDP growth, and highlighting Australia's housing affordability crisis. In simple terms, home ownership has gone from being affordable to almost unreachable for many Australians. And it doesn't stop there. In April alone, property prices climbed for the 3rd straight month, setting yet another record, rising 0.3% in just 30 days, and 3.2% over the past year. To put that into perspective, more than $2,700 was added to the median home price in a single month. A sharp reminder of just how relentless the housing market has become. On the flip side, when we examine per capita income, it's clear from the graphics that GDP per capita dropped by 1.5% in the year leading up to September 2024. When Australians are asked what's affecting their daily lives the most, the answer is unmistakable for the majority. It is the soaring cost of living. How did it all come to this? And what led us here? This is the hidden reality of life in Australia today. Australia is often seen as one of the most stunning countries on Earth, a land of sun-kissed beaches, vibrant cities, and breathtaking national parks. From the outside, it looks like a slice of pure paradise. But for those dreaming of living here, the truth is far more complicated, because behind the beauty lies a tough and often hidden reality. Home prices in Australia are at all-time highs. Rents have reached record levels, and homelessness is on the rise. In Sydney, the average home now costs nearly 14 times the annual disposable income, making it the 2nd most expensive city in the world to buy property, just after Hong Kong. And it's not just Sydney. Home prices in Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth have surged by 70 to 75% over the past 5 years, reaching historic highs, while wages have grown a mere 12%. The gap between income and housing costs is growing rapidly and unsustainably. Prices have climbed so steeply that it now takes the average Australian buyer around 10 years to save a 20% deposit for a median-priced home, double what it took in 2010. Young people haven't had the advantage of benefiting from rising property values. Instead, they're stuck trying to catch up in a market that keeps moving ahead of them. As a result, home ownership among Australians under 34 has dropped by nearly 25 to 30%. So, what if you just want to rent? Surely that's easier, right? Unfortunately, no. Renting isn't much better. In Sydney, the median rent is now about $3,000 to $3,200 a month. Brisbane isn't far behind, with rents around $2,500 to $2,700. In the past, rent used to increase slowly and steadily. But since 2020, rents have been going up more than 8% each year. People are stuck trying to pay modern rent prices while still earning what feels like outdated wages. And to make matters worse, it's not just about affordability, it's about availability. The demand for rentals is through the roof. Every listing gets flooded with applications, sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds. At open houses, lines of hopeful renters stretch around the block. In the end, people aren't fighting for luxury. They're simply trying to secure a roof over their heads.
Every rental I go to, there's 100 other people going to and applying to the exact same rental. It's a numbers game, and one side doesn't have the right numbers anymore.
The belief that working hard will lead to a stable, comfortable life is starting to fade. More and more honest, hardworking Australians are feeling defeated and stuck. Which brings us to the big question: how did real estate get so out of control? Immigration. A common target for blame when discussing Australia's housing crisis is immigration. This week, the government admitted that the migration system is in disarray and needs a complete overhaul. Between 2023 and 2024, close to 890,000 newcomers arrived in Australia. That's the largest influx of migrants in the country's modern history, around 350,000 more than the levels seen before the COVID-19 pandemic. The effect of this sudden increase is clear. More people need homes, while the number of available houses remains the same, naturally drives prices up. Experts say this surge has been especially felt in the rental market. Most of the new arrivals come on temporary visas, and about 70% of them become renters. This demand puts immense pressure on areas with high migrant populations. In places like southeast Melbourne or Sydney's inner southwest, rent prices spiked by up to 18 to 20% within just 1 year. Many migrants also manage rising costs by living with more housemates. This trend has pushed rental returns to levels that haven't been seen in decades. But does this apply to property prices too? The claim that immigration is the main cause of soaring house prices doesn't quite hold up. In fact, Australia's migration rate has actually declined over the past 10 years and is currently aligned with long-term trends. The real issue is this: even though the population has continued to grow, new housing construction has not kept pace. That's where the true imbalance lies, not just in the number of people coming in, but in the homes that aren't being built to accommodate them. The home building shortfall. Australia's construction sector is trapped in a difficult cycle. In 2023, with the cost of building homes rising once again, only 177,702 new dwellings were completed, far short of the target of 240,000, marking the lowest number in 10 years. Meanwhile, the country experienced the largest wave of immigration in decades. So what's going wrong? Since 1966, the rate of home construction has consistently failed to keep pace with population growth. The situation worsened significantly around the year 2000, when building activity sharply declined, leading to a severe housing shortage that still persists today. One of the key reasons behind this shortage lies in Australia's housing culture. Australia is a suburban nation at heart, where people tend to prefer sprawling developments over compact, high-density urban living. To illustrate, the average population density in 5 major Australian cities is about 1,660 people per square kilometre. In contrast, Canada has around 3,360, the UK about 3,900, and the USA approximately 5,480. This difference is striking when compared to other major Western nations. In fact, Australia's urban areas are among the least densely populated in the world. Many Australians prefer suburban lifestyles for raising families and fostering safe communities. And with vast stretches of undeveloped land across the country, the idea of building outward seems entirely feasible. Take Sydney, for instance. It could potentially accommodate 290,000 new homes in nearby greenfield areas. However, while this sounds promising in theory, the reality is far more complicated. Australia is facing a serious NIMBY, not in my backyard, issue. Despite being in the middle of a housing crisis, March 2024 recorded the lowest number of approvals for detached homes since 2012. And we're not talking about apartment blocks. These are standalone suburban homes. A combination of community resistance and government bureaucracy has made the approval process painfully slow. For example, in Australia, it takes on average 100 to 120 days to get approval for a single home, including planning, building permits, utility clearances, and other necessary steps. Approval times in Canada are roughly the same. In contrast, In the United States, a similar home approval process typically takes only 15 to 30 days. Since 2020, the value of detached houses has increased 3 times faster than that of apartments. These delays have made it nearly impossible for the government to achieve its housing construction goals. At the current rate, Australia is on track to deliver 40% fewer homes than what is needed to meet its affordable housing targets. The sluggish approval system has also created a false sense of land scarcity, artificially limiting land supply and pushing prices even higher. Australia has one of the most generous tax systems in the world when it comes to investing in real estate. A key feature of this system is something called negative gearing. Let's understand what the negative gearing is. It works like this. Let's say an investor borrows money to buy a home and the interest on that loan is $20,000 a year. And let's say when they rent out the property, they only make $10,000. Well, negative gearing lets the investor take that $10,000 loss off their income for the year. So if they earn $80,000 a year, they only pay tax as if they earned $70,000. So negative gearing is a strategy where property investors can claim a tax deduction if they lose money on their rental. In other words, if your rental income is less than the costs of owning the property, like loan interest, repairs, and maintenance, the government lets you subtract that loss from your taxable income, often resulting in a tax refund. This setup encourages people to buy property not to live in, but to reduce how much tax they pay. And it's working. Australians have become some of the most property-focused people on the planet. More than 2 million Australians own at least one investment property. That's about 1 in every 5 households. Interestingly, 72% of these investors own just one property. So it's not big companies controlling the housing market. It's everyday Australians, mostly from the middle class. And when you ask them why they invest in real estate, the most common answer is, because the government gives tax benefits. This mix of tax breaks and rising house prices has made property the main way for Australians to grow their wealth. But relying on property alone has its downsides. Fewer Australians invest in the stock market or start their own businesses compared to people in other Western countries. So while many people appear richer, most of their money is tied up in homes, and a lot of it is borrowed. Right now, household debt in Australia is extremely high, reaching more than 120% of the country's GDP, one of the highest rates in the world. Falling productivity and weak investment. Now that we've looked at the reasons behind the current situation, let's talk about what it's doing to the economy. One of the most worrying signs is that worker productivity is going down. In the past few years, the amount of work people get done has dropped by more than 4%. In fact, 2023 was the worst year for productivity in Australia's history. And all this is happening while living costs are going up and wages aren't keeping up. Over time, this adds up. When you adjust for inflation, people today are earning less than they did in 2011. This is the longest period of wage stagnation Australia has seen since World War II. It doesn't stop there. Private investment is shrinking too, especially in the small and medium business sector. The number of these businesses has barely grown. Simply put, Australia's economy is slowing down, and more people are starting to feel the pressure in their daily lives. So what's the way forward? The most obvious step is to build more housing. Leaders need to be bold enough to push through local objections and speed up the building process. That means cutting down on paperwork, making approval processes faster, and encouraging the construction of more apartments and townhouses in cities. Second, the tax rules need to be updated. Things like negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts should be reviewed, so housing becomes a place to live, not just a way to save on taxes or make quick money. Third, Australia needs to focus on innovation and new industries. That means supporting small businesses, investing in future technologies, and giving young Australians more chances to succeed outside of just owning property. Because in the end, a country can't truly move forward if its young people can't afford to live comfortably, start families, or take chances on new ideas. Australia still has huge potential, with its natural beauty, rich resources, and smart, hardworking people. But if real changes aren't made, the dream of a better life in Australia could slowly slip away for the next generation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, drop a like. And if you love this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more coming your way.